This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you would like to help support this channel and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron on patreon.com/cityscapes. Hi guys, CityScapes here and welcome back to Verville episode 56. Today I don't really want to start off the episode by talking about what we did in the last one. Instead, I would really like to introduce you to today's guest builder, because then I can finally lean back and leave the talking to someone who's a bit more eloquent than I am. And yeah, of course you read the title, you saw the thumbnail, it is the almighty Akruas. Who would have thought? Jesus. I remember back in the day when I didn't even use any mods, when I didn't have any clue how the workshop worked. I was watching this guy on YouTube building this insanely massive city with this strange mod that allowed you to manipulate every single asset in such delicate ways. And I was just thinking to myself, like, who the hell would spend that insane amount of time on such little things like making a house perfectly fit a street corner or something like that? And well, a couple of months later, I turned back into his series of Aurelia and had to learn his ways. So yeah, thank you so much for all the great inspiration you provide for all of us City Skylines detailers, and even a bigger thank you for building today in Verville. So I would say the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello everyone, and let's talk about the time-lapse. Let's introduce what I'm building in here and just how I built it. Alright, so I picked a place just outside the city. I think that at this point there was nothing apart from these roads kind of converging here, and there was just an intersection to different parts of the city. But most importantly, there is this main avenue aiming here with the tram tracks. So I immediately thought that I am going to probably focus on some kind of a tram project because, you know, why not? I really do like doing those. And there was also an opportunity for a roundabout. And I really like doing these kinds of inside roundabout stations because it's just a great opportunity to do something different and do lots of details and these kinds of technicalities with networks and all of those things. So we are going to get inspired by real life actually for this project. I believe that this was picked by CityScapes though, and it's a real life tram station from Zurich. It's called Letzigrund, I think, and it also has a stadium right next to it, so that's kind of fitting, I suppose. But anyway, in real life, it's basically a roundabout with slightly oval shape, and there is exactly this kind of configuration or layout of the tram tracks inside. So it's just like a through line with also a loop. Or the loop is only accessible from one direction though, so that's kind of interesting. And I don't think I ever did anything like that, so, you know, kind of a nice opportunity again to do something new. Now, since it's a roundabout, I wanted to, pick some kind of buildings around it, and what better choice than to use just these roundabout buildings. I'm using them in the futuristic series, but they are not really that futuristic looking, and you can easily just place them in a realistic city as well. And I don't think they are anywhere else in the city, so it's a perfect combination. Now, since we are doing like a big capacity tram station, it makes sense that the capacity is used somehow. So I also decided that this place is going to have a stadium. Now, this is the real life stadium from Gdańsk, I believe. It looks really, really good. I was using it in Aurelia project as well back in the day. And I'm not really sure if right from the workshop it comes this scaled, because there are lots of stadiums in the workshop that are smaller than their real life counterparts, and you need to scale them up. And the only way to do that is with procedural objects. Although this conversion into PO in here, in this particular case, also had a different reason, and that's the slope. This place is not flat. It's kind of uneven, so this tram stop is on a slight elevation, and down towards the city it's getting lower. So I wanted to do it so that the stadium is going to be accessed on multiple levels. It's just going to allow me to later do some kind of verticality, quotation marks, and play with some kind of stairs, retaining walls, and these kinds of things, right? So the tram stop, the people who will just get off the trams and enter the stadium, they will enter it from the upper level, and people who will arrive by a car or maybe buses later, I'm not really sure, then they are just going to enter the bottom side of the stadium, lower parts, right? Almost exactly how it is in real life with the stadium. Although I am going to change the stadium building some more with procedural objects. Now, I'm just going to do some details. I really wanted to already finish this tram station, because why not, before jumping into different parts of the project, which I'm, doing a lot in my series. But here I kind of felt that it's probably a good idea to kind of behave myself, right? So let's just finish the project at hand and then move to do something different. Right, so this tram stop, it's not exactly looking like this with the planters in real life. Actually, in real life, it's obviously worse. We are doing it better in here, of course. So we are going to do like heavy details with these kinds of planters and overall greenery. And I do believe that right now in the city, when I was building this, the station is on that loop. I think you can see all the people waiting there, right? Because right now at this point, the tracks, the straight track was not going anywhere. And there was no point in creating like a temporary loop. Although I think I did it there. I just saw it in the time lapse, so maybe that's what I did. So in that case, I have no idea why all those people are waiting on that side of the loop, and I'm not really sure what the reason is. But I suppose that in some kind of cinematics that CityScapes will show you, it's going to be perfectly clear how this place works. Anyway, enough of that. Let's focus more on what's happening. So I was doing this actually some time ago. I'm not really sure if that's spoiling something or not. Sorry if it is. But I would not be using this technique for making wires these days, because this is insanely complicated, more than it really needs to be, honestly. I believe that these are the railway wires, and yeah, fortunately today we have node controllers, so we can make them further apart for the double tracks. That's kind of important for those median roads. But everywhere else, it's a bit clunky to use these. So these days, what I would do is I would just select all of these tracks, copy paste them with Move It somewhere else, and convert them into the wires extracted from the LRT networks. And that's just so much easier. And obviously after this, I would just copy it back into the place by holding Alt with Move It, so it would snap exactly over the networks. On the intersections, it would probably need to be like manually adjusted, because obviously the wires would not be there. They would be only on segments. But it is really not that complicated with that technique. I think I was showing that recently in some like Altengrad videos or something. And these days we also have, for example, the ability to use the decorative networks over segments with intersection marking tools. I don't think I've experimented with wires with that, but I'm not really sure if it would work, because some of these wires, they are considered railways or like train tracks, so they are not considered decorative by the intersection marking tool. So I suppose you still need to do it manually. Although, yeah, like I said, this technique that I was showing here in the time-lapse, that's probably maybe a tiny bit outdated for the trams. And on any kind of complicated stops, more complicated than these ones, it really gets very complicated really fast. But anyway, that is the tram stop done, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm going to return to it, probably not. So we are just going to focus on the stadium. And this is exactly what I was talking about. The stadium is on a slope, so that the people who arrive by tram, they are going to enter it at the lower level, and this road there on the right, that's going to be the bottom surface, the bottom level, right? So that road, I believe, was already there, so the stadium kind of, nicely fits in this area. I didn't really want to commit to like a whole city block in this area because I wasn't really sure what kind of buildings would fit here, apart from the roundabout structures, of course. So it's going to be all about the stadium and the tram stop. Now, this kind of details, this is obviously very important with all kinds of these projects in here. So these kinds of fake surfaces or ploppable surfaces, I'm not really sure why I'm always saying fake, because they are there, they're not fake. And in here, we are going to create some transitions. So around the stadium, there is just a retaining wall that's going to copy its shape, nothing all that crazy. There is later going to be lots of greenery, I believe, because that retaining wall is just a bit too hard on the eye on the side of the stadium. But over here on this main road through the area, I'm not really sure what it is, we are just going to do some more interesting details. So I'm for example trying to extract with procedural objects these kinds of like front windows. They are just going to be serving as some sort of larger doors, like entrances into either the rest of the stadium or some kind of shops below the stadium for like, fan shops or something like that. And most importantly, visually, it's just going to serve as some sort of a breakage of this bigger concrete wall. Now that I'm looking at this, now that I'm thinking of it, it might have probably been a good idea to put those cube service buildings in here, maybe like commercial or offices, just to put some kind of foot traffic into those doors in there. So CityScapes, when you are listening, you might consider maybe doing that. I don't know if you have those cube service buildings, but I'm using that all the time these days, so maybe it might be worth it as well. Now, unlike in Aurelia, when I was doing this stadium, I suppose that realistically, even in Switzerland and even in like Central European countries, the stadiums would probably need some sort of parking spaces, and maybe on the surface. And also it's going to serve as a little decoration, I suppose, because, using a parking lot as a decoration probably sounds weird, but why not? It's just like a bigger black surface. It's going to allow me to do this intersection marking tool detailing because I was kind of freshly using it back in the day, so I really wanted to play with it a lot. And these kinds of parking lot entrances, they are obviously huge. So, big volume or big footprint for these kinds of changes. So we are just going to paint all these medians, all these, lines and everything, fillers, and really play around with it so that it looks similar to the markings in the rest of the city, I suppose, and the rest of this area. But the parking, it is going to be functional. I'm not really sure right now if I put the functional parking spaces in there, but even if it isn't, it's just, like I said, going to be like a decoration, and it's going to nicely complement the stadium. Now, this main road, though, this intersection, it's not just going into the parking lot, but it's also going to go into some sort of like an indication of an underground garage. So like an entrance for all the players who are going to arrive into the stadium, and maybe even some like buses, equipment and maintenance and whatnot. So that's also important to have. That's, what stadium buildings really should have realistically. Looking at this part in the time-lapse when I'm doing these markings on the intersections, it just makes me remember the times before intersection marking tools. It was a major headache to do these kinds of markings, and I usually just didn't do them, right? I only did them on like very important intersections that usually were the focus of some projects, because they just took a really long time to set up. And still, I did not want to do it in the entire city because I would probably go crazy. But with intersection marking tools, you can. And it's not exactly like one click and it's done, right? You have to do it a bit more carefully if you want to have them this customized. But it's still like so much more efficient, so much faster. And you are going to do these projects more likely, right? If I did not have intersection marking tools, I would probably not do that parking lot. Or if I did, I would not focus this intersection in this particular place. I would probably make the entrance to the parking lot somewhere else, outside of the stadium a bit more, outside of the area, and do some sort of different detail on this, like a plaza in front of it, right? But the intersection itself is just adding to the area a lot more. But like I said, if I did not have intersection marking tools, I would probably not even bother attempting this project in here, mini project. So that's kind of interesting to think about it, that today we have these kinds of different tools that not only allows us to do these things, yeah, sure, but also to think differently about just building stuff in the game, in our cities. We are just able to do different kinds of projects that would just be a bit too difficult back in the day. So it's just great. It obviously just adds to the overall creativity, and people are able to create wonderful things with these new tools. And that's not just intersection marking tools, but network multi-tool, procedural objects, of course, even though they are a bit older. But there are lots of new features in procedural objects. For example, when I was building this, we did not have the draw function with the circle shapes, right? So you could have seen me, for example, back then do those surfaces around that stadium manually, like each vertex manually. So these days, that's also faster. So, incredible how more efficient it got. And you are just able to build much more efficiently, quickly, and without that much worry, that much pain, right? Like back in the day. But anyway, I digress. So these kinds of last details that I'm just going to put here quickly, these are just some bollards, street lights, and trash cans, I believe, and a Swiss flag I'm going to put up there, and that's gonna be it. I'm usually seeing opinions that these kinds of surfaces should be broken a bit more with like kiosks or food stalls or some sort of more details. But I really don't want to do that in this particular place or with any other bigger places, because there is a purpose for this. It's a stadium, right? Lots of people are going to be walking in the stadium if there is like a match or a concert or any kind of event, and it doesn't make sense to obstruct the flow of pedestrians through the area into the stadium and out of it, maybe even most importantly out of the stadium. So I usually just keep these places open, and it's the people that are going to be the detail. I'm not sure if I did that as part of this project, if I put like park people's generators inside the stadium. I think I only did that on these surfaces so that there are at least like a couple of people hanging out. But it might be worth it to maybe try experimenting with these like Park Life, cube services, just like with all the rest of the cube services. There are also these for Park Life, and maybe turn the stadium into Park Life. But, it's just like possible ideas, I suppose. It's not exactly needed. Anyway, the time lapse is nearing the end, so that's going to be it from me. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a nice, refreshing project, and now I'm going to return the microphone to Cityscape. So take care, everyone, and goodbye.
Well, what else could I say then? Thank you very, very much for taking up on my offer here to build in Verville. It really means a lot to me. Feels like having some kind of monument in Verville now. And I just love how distinctively Akruas it looks, this whole project here. I actually did place some cube buildings inside the stadium, so in the cinematics you get to see the people walking all over the place, and also inside the building. Looks super cool. Really, really happy with what you did here. Thank you so much once again. And also thank you, dear viewer, very, very much for watching. Please leave a like and also consider subscribing if you haven't done so. And definitely, if you haven't already, check out Akruas' channel. It's all linked down in the video description. And I am really looking forward to see you in the next one.